Good evening, everyone. My name is AGK. I'm the volunteer in chief, or in other words, president of Thai Silicon Valley. Every month we've been having this My Story session. So welcome all of you to join that. Today, we'll hear from another wonderful speaker that our chair, Naveen Bish, has put together. But before I go on to introducing Naveen, let me also spend a few minutes or seconds about, we just came off a wonderful, wonderful TICON conference. We had, over 31,000 registrants. We had 200 speakers, grand keynotes. And for those of you who could not attend TICON for whatever reason, please look at the YouTube link. All those contents are coming up alive right now for the TICON feed or the Thai channel. Business has to go on. So we will, in fact, post TICON after a 1 week of rest. This is the first Thai Silicon Valley event. So welcome everyone. We look forward to providing more and more, content like this. That's educational content, opportunities to invest through Thai Angels and the entrepreneur program and others. So the My Story session is a very important for all of us to learn and pick few nuggets from our speaker today. So let me introduce Naveen Bisht, who is a charter member, and he's been chairing the My Story program for us. And he's the founder and CEO of Krita, and he is, I can tell his entire background, but he's been a diehard Silicon Valley, Thai Silicon Valley supporter. He's been a charter member. He's repeat entrepreneur. So without further ado, let me welcome Naveen. Naveen, all yours.
Thank you, AGK. Really appreciate your kind intro. And so we'll just get started. Good evening and morning to folks who are joining from India or other parts of the world where it's morning. And so we really, so a few items before we get started. Number one, please write up your questions that you want to ask from our amazing speaker today, Chris. I'm sure you will have a lot of them. So please make sure you write it up. So we'll try to cover as many as possible. And so that's so that we are ready for it. So with that, let me just introduce our speaker today. So the way, one of the things I would like to share is basically, I'm sure a number of you are entrepreneurs and serial entrepreneurs and aspiring ones in this audience today, and which we have mostly in our this My Story series. One of the questions you ask as a serial entrepreneur is, how do you repeatedly succeed at a feat that eludes even some of the largest and well-funded businesses in the whole world to come up with business ideas that transform industries? So this is what Krish Ramakrishnan has been able to do in his own entrepreneurial journey all throughout. And so one of the things Krish does, from what I understand, is by looking at technology trends and at the conversion of a couple of trends, he's able to find an opportunity, a pain point that 2 to 3 years down the road, a customer needs it to be solved. So this is how he founded BlueJeans back in 2009 with his co-founder, Alagu Pariyanan. He's a fellow Bitsian from the same school where I came from. And to basically make video conferencing as comfortable and as casual as your pair of blue jeans. And Verizon acquired it last year in May. Over the years, company garnered a number of awards, including G2 Crowd for video conferencing, and was positioned in the Gartner Visionaries Quadrant. All those in the marketing and startups know about Gartner's Quadrant stuff. So for over 4 years, and on completeness of vision and ability to execute, and many other awards they received. Prior to BlueJeans, Chris has been founder and CEO of a number of startup ventures, including Topspin, which was a data center virtualization player, which was acquired by Cisco back in 2005. And before that, he was founder and CEO of Internet Junction, which was also acquired by Cisco in 1995. And if I recall, knowing some of the folks who were with Chris, is that was the second acquisition by Cisco when Cisco went on a spree of acquisitions, and look where Cisco is today. So Chris served over 10 years in various capacities at Cisco in the role of general manager, and also currently he serves as a trustee of Landmark College in Vermont. In 2019, Chris was also awarded an honorary doctorate degree from Monmouth University, where he was the commencement speaker at the graduate school. So without taking too much of thrill from Chris's story, I would like to hand it over to Chris to share his colorful, amazing entrepreneurial and professional journey with us. Thank you, Chris. And we'll
Hey,
give you a virtual round of applause to welcome you.
no problem. That was a great introduction. Thank you. Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, Ty. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm coming here and not representing Verizon, my safe harbor thing. This is my story. So it is Zoom, so it's going to be clunky for me to share a screen, but I will try my best to share a screen. What I want to do is talk to you basically about my journey and my experience and the lessons learned from that. And as an entrepreneur, I never thought I will be one, but there's always a lot of accidental entrepreneurs, so I can count as one. But so throughout, as an entrepreneur, it's never up and it's always never down. It's always a roller coaster. So my journey is no different. So I wanted to maybe take 20 minutes of going through some of the lessons learned. But more importantly, what I want to do is leave time for you to ask specific questions about my experience, whether it be venture capital, whether it be how do you get the first customer, what were some of the issues with, how did we compare with Zoom, whatever on your mind, I'm ready to talk. All right, with that, let me share my screen quickly. Having trouble sharing my screen, I'll find it. This is, there it is, share. I would assume everybody can see the screen, all right? With that, so the first thing I want to share a little bit of my background. I assume everybody thought I was born in India. Sorry, you know where I was born? In Myanmar. Well, that country is going through a lot of turmoil, but that's where I was born. The next thing, my journey is around the world. The next thing is I didn't do elementary school in the usual places. Actually, I did it in Thailand. And in fact, once upon a time, I could actually speak Thai. Forgotten that because at that time, my dad was in the diplomatic corps and we were in Bangkok and my babysitter was a Thai lady. And therefore, that's how I learned Thai speaking. In fact, I could do translations in Thai. And then I had stayed in India. But here's the thing. Surprise, surprise. I did my high school in New York City, in Forest Hills, New York City, one of the very few in 1971. In fact, many of you have grown up in lots of schools in this country. Your daughters and sons go to. When I went to New York City High School in 1971, there were only 2 students of Indian origin in New York City in that high school. So you can always stand out. And of course, went back to Chennai, and then of course, Monmouth University, as you talk about, and now moved into the Bay Area in 1987. As you can see, I'm really, really old in that sense, but relatively young in spirit. So that's my journey in terms around the world. One of the things that I could say is all these experiences in some way shaped, and you don't know how it is, but somehow shapes my thinking in terms of handling tough situations. So that's, and so from there, let me just talk to you a little bit about the 3 companies, my 3 startups at a glance. Naveen mentioned Internet Junction in 1993, and this is prior to internet. In fact, Internet Junction is about connecting all these private networks to the internet. And guess what? The number one thing that you have to do in those days, you have to explain what the internet was. And I mean, many of you youngsters out there think that the internet always existed, but for us old folks, the internet did not. We had to explain what the internet was. And the other thing is, in those days in Silicon Valley, it was you couldn't get venture capital if you're not known. So one of the things that we had to do is self-fund it ourselves. So that's the story of Internet Junction, and it was really the pre-.com. I wish if it was .com, I could have gotten lots of money and lots of multiples and valuation, but that's what the story of Internet Junction. Now, other thing that I started in 2001, by the way, as Naveen mentioned, Internet Junction was acquired by Cisco. And the interesting story there was, I'm a software engineer by trade. I've never met anybody, don't know anything about business practices and so on. But how did I become the president and CEO of Internet Junction? Very simple. My two friends and co-founders said, Krish, you are the slowest coder. We both have PhDs. You don't code as fast as we do. So you get to be the president and do all the other thing us engineers don't want to do. So that's how they appointed me as president. And therefore, when the time came, I had to go and sit in front of John Chambers and negotiate a deal for which I have never done. So everything was on the cusp, learning, if you will. You got to sit in front of John and he's saying, how much money do you want? And you have no idea. And you just, you learn on the fly. So that's a little tidbit. If you're a bad coder, you could be a president of a company. Yeah. So I left Cisco and joined Topspin, partly post.com, where all the crash happened, and there was lots of companies that were there. You know the story. 2000 was a big year for the .com crash. So one of the companies, a Topspin, a friend of mine, had funding. And they hired me to be a CEO of that company because I know a little bit about content delivery network and so on. But .com made that all non-existent. So we had to pivot. So having funding, but no idea, you had to come up with some ideas to go. So one of the things that I did, again, on the fly, there were 30 employees in the company, and said, okay, we have 15 million in funding. We have 30 days to find an alternate business plan, some idea, something so that we don't have to shut the company down. And somebody said, hey, how about we bring all these computers, PCs and servers, the commodity, and find a way to string them together to build giant computers instead of spending money on control data or all these other supercomputers at the time, or Sun Microsystem. Well, having no better idea than that, we said, yeah, sure, why not? We got 15 million, let's just buy a lot of, and let's create supercomputers. And Topspin became one of the most successful builder of supercomputers. We, at one point in time, we had the number 8 supercomputers built with partnership with IBM, and there were other supercomputers I built for Sandia that had partnership with Dell computers. So that was one of those things. So when Cisco said, hey, we need to get into the server business, they knew a guy down the street. My company was in Mountain View, California. They are in San Jose. And Cisco acquired us so that they can get the knowledge to build the server business. This is the story of Topspin. And the real takeaway is if you have to pivot, you have to pivot. And pivoting is not a bad thing. It just works. And of course, 2010 to 2020, I'm still at 2021, continuing on BlueJeans. And this came out of the idea that we ought to do something in video. And we didn't have any knowledge. I didn't have any firsthand knowledge of video. It's just that I felt that video would be a good thing for the future. And obviously, Netflix was great in streaming, so you couldn't get into that business. So video conferencing is the only one that was left. And so we totally entered into that. So some commonality, before I move on to the next slide, is that in all these scenarios, you have to have a lot of family support. My wife was great supporting my ventures. Even though it was hard on her, she supported. And you have to have a lot of luck. Those are good ingredients to have. And then, of course, you need to be able to take some steps. And I'm going to talk about that. So, and mostly my topic is going about what I learned from BlueJeans. So in all these scenarios, what I found, the most important one is, can you take that first step? If you look at everywhere, every day, people have great ideas. Ideas are abound everywhere. You talk to somebody, they got ideas. Everybody has ideas. But what happens is 99% of those people who have great ideas never take the first step. That first step could be a small step, a mid-sized step, or a big step, but it has, if you take the first step, it makes it a lot easier. So a simple example of that, and I'll go back to the Internet Junction days when we thought about connecting companies to the internet. The first step we took was, let's take the plunge and resign from our job and find a consulting gig so that we can actually self-fund. We didn't know what the business plan is going to be, but we knew we need to take the first step. In a lot of these scenarios, taking that first step makes it a lot easier to move on to the next one and to the next one. And pretty soon you'll find all those people who had the same idea as you did, they're all behind you because you moved on, and it makes it easier and easier and easier. That's one lesson I've always learned. So whenever my teams come up with ideas are, I want to focus on what are we going to do next? And that focus is what gets you into execution. Of course, Wayne Gretzky said it best, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Moving on, the other one, everybody looks at this, especially in the venture community, this is always this notion that you need to have experience. I'm here to say that experience is overrated in some way, because experience teaches you to do certain things a certain way. So let me give you an example, and I'm going to bring the story of BlueJeans here for a second. We were looking at BlueJeans, how to do video conference interoperability. One of the things about video conferencing is nothing works with anything else. See, this is still sad because video is a communication device. Imagine if a phone doesn't work with other phones, if you cannot place a call from an Android phone to an iPhone or a landline to an iPhone, you'll be unhappy. But video is still that way. So BlueJeans thing was trying to come up with an interoperability. The number one objection people said was, hey, you guys have no experience in the video space. And in order to do video, you have to have massive amount of hardware. It can never, you need hardware, you have ASIC. Both my co-founder and I, he's well smarter than I, but even then, we don't have the expertise in hardware. So that lack of hardware expertise did not hold us back. In fact, we said, well, we don't have no idea how to do it in hardware. Let's try software. And in terms of, and let's try something in the cloud because that has not been done before. And every naysayer at that point in time said, video cannot be done and video mixing cannot be done in the cloud. And since we didn't have any experience that it cannot be done, we decided to do it. And that became quite successful in terms of the first ever cloud company to attempt video interoperability in the cloud. So when you go out there and people are looking at you and say, you don't have the experience, maybe they're thinking about the problem the wrong way and you're thinking about the problem the right way. But only time will tell. Never be daunted by that. Those are common things that I've learned. Always take the first step, and it doesn't matter whether you are experienced in that area or not. Just getting on with it will be good. So now I want to pivot a little bit, the story of BlueJeans. I want to give you a little bit of background. So now, what's the story? What's behind the name? The first thing that people always ask me is, what's behind the name of BlueJeans? How did you come up with it? Well, the truth be told, I was actually had a venture capital pitch, and it did not occur to us to have a name for the company. It was still NewCo. I was driving along on the highway towards the venture. I had a song on the radio. It was Forever in BlueJeans. And somehow that stayed in my head. And when our funders asked, hey, what's the name of the company? It just popped up. So from that's how the BlueJeans name came about. But it also is about how can we make a product that has a universal appeal. If you remember, denim or blue jeans is the only fabric in the world that is strong, that is hard, that's universal appeal. Doesn't matter whether you're in the Middle East or Russia or China or here or anywhere else. People may fight, but they still all wear blue jeans. So that's the reason we picked the name BlueJeans. And here's the small hitch. I couldn't find the domain name was taken. BlueJeans.com was owned by somebody who was a squatter. And in his and this guy I tracked him down to the Maui beaches, and he demanded a lot of money. And at that time, the company itself was funded only for $2 million or small amount of money, and he was asking for $150,000. So there, you had to make a decision. If I believe in the company, the domain is worth it. If I don't believe in the company, we can always change and go something else. So, but we decided that we need the domain name. That was one of the best decisions that I have made. So the story of BlueJeans is, as I said a little bit, it's about interoperability. It's about how to bring different video systems together. We had one of the fastest rise in terms of sales. And I think we did from zero since I launched to 50 million in less than maybe in 2.5 years. One of those things that I couldn't even believe that it was well done, the product market fit. But success does not guarantee future success. Along the way, there was a small company that came out of the woodworks. You may all know it. I think it's called Zoom. And they had a smaller product, and we were market leaders there. Now, they were focusing on the SMB space, and we were focused on the enterprise space. And our customers, Coca-Cola, Nike, Starbucks, Disney, Facebook, a lot of them are still our customers, but those are we focused. But what they focused on was accumulating a lot of customers and a different business model, a business model with freemium in mind. And they designed their product for that. And I think one of the lessons I learned is you need to be watchful of your competitors. And you need to be very alert and cannot rest on our laurels. Even though we did not rest, we found it difficult to grow the business when there is a free alternative that was available. So that's one of the things that I've learned in along the way. There's lots of ups and downs in terms of growth. But when you fall behind, sometimes it's very hard to catch up. and or when a competitor comes up with a business model, it is something worth taking note of. So all of you trying to start a company, one of the things that I would say is there are several ways to innovate. Sometimes the innovation does not have to be on the product side. Sometimes the innovation can be on the business model. That, in fact, might even be better than innovating on the product side. So some of the lessons learned from me, we already talked about taking the first step and experiences. The other thing that I find that very important is in building a company, culture matters. If you have a strong culture, and what is culture? It is the reason people come to work, stay together. A strong culture is you can weather through any storm. And as you know, the life of a startup goes up and down, so you can weather any storm. BlueJeans had one of the strongest culture. There are still employees who have been with us 10 plus years. Imagine, with so much pressure in the Bay Area for top talent, most employees of BlueJeans have been with us since inception. That's a record. Along the way, we have won many best places to work award. And that is because the culture keeps us everything together, and we'll fight together, you win together, and you lose together, but you stay together. That culture. We already talked about trend line and headlines, but let me talk about one unique thing about leadership. What I've learned is leadership is not, people define leadership as vision, execution, all this. For me, leadership is about trust. And what I say is you're only a leader if there are followers. Otherwise, you're just a manager. So one of the things that I did at BlueJeans, part of culture, part of leadership, is institute total transparency. There isn't a secret in the company that we wanted to have. Everything was open book. So I'll share you one incident. One day, I decided that I had this crazy notion. What if I could actually broadcast the board meeting to every employee? Imagine most employees think that board meetings are some opaque, people get into the room, you have no idea what's going on. I decided that I will broadcast the board meeting. And that is watching reality TV. And once we started doing it, people couldn't stop it. So I broadcast board meetings for probably 2 years. And it's one of the highlights of my management style. Now, why did I do that? Because I wanted trust between the employees, the executives, and the board member. It's a simple scenario, right? That happens in all of these companies. Your board member is asking a question inside a board meeting, and let's say it's a sales situation. The sales guy will come and say, the leader, I'm just taking an example, no particular situation, will say, hey, what happened to the deal? And the sales VP will say, oh yeah, the sales, that particular deal got deferred. But in reality, you probably lost the deal, and the rank and file sales teams know that you lost the deal. So imagine when you're in a open board meeting where things are being broadcast and people are watching almost like a live TV. And the board member says, hey, what happened to that deal? That executive at that moment in time has a choice to make. Do I simply say the deal is deferred? Or do I tell the truth, the deal is lost? He knows his employees are watching. And that's what trust is all about. Do you leaders say the truth? And that's one of the things that I've always done as a trust. So I already talked about when you fall behind, it's always hard to catch up. And my final thing is, in this business, we want to be a successful entrepreneur, successful leader. Everybody focuses on products and technology. What I found is focus on relationship with your employees, relationship with your co-founder, relationship with your customers. Many of my customers are customers today because they know that I will never let them down. And it was done with a handshake. When I signed the deal for Internet Junction with John Chambers, he was negotiating all sorts of things. And I said to him, I don't need contract. No amount of contract is going to keep us. I'll give you my word, my handshake, and I will be here to create new business for you. And that's all he wanted to hear. And another story I will tell you is this pandemic. I was actually, last day, I was in Chicago airport. I got a call from one of my biggest customer. It was Facebook. And Facebook said, we are shutting down next week. All our employees worldwide are going to be on your service. Can you handle it? And I told them, I will take care of it. I knew behind the scene that I have a great co-founder who will actually take care of it. But it's that relationship that the customer is able to call you and hear you say, yes, I will have your back. That's what relationship is, and that's what endears. So focus on the relationship, and that it outlasts everything else. So today, one of my best friend in the industry is Eric Wan, and is still there. And Naveen and I used to compete. So just a closure, this is my co-founder, Alago. He's the better looking guy. And this is how we have aged with all these things. And I wanted to get a picture of me and Eric Wan, but I couldn't find it. But hey, Eric, you are round 1, 2, and 3, but this is a boxing match. I got some jumbo size help on my side, so watch out. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. Amazing story. And I learned a lot of new things, as I mentioned to you earlier, while going over your presentation, which I didn't know, like since even though I've known you over 25 plus years. And thank you for actually when Internet Junction was acquired, me and my co-founder in my first company, we had built this gateway product. I said, oh, what do we do now? We have to turn it into a firewall. That's how we turned it into a firewall IPXDX company. Yeah, thank you. Anyway, first of all, I really appreciate your sharing your story. Now let's start. I'll start with the first question, then we have a number of questions from the audience. So one of the articles, by the way, for the audience, Chris has written a number of articles on culture, innovations, and in fact, I was suggesting to him that he should write a book. And they have appeared in Huffington Post, as well as in Entrepreneur and other Inc. magazines. So just so you guys can do a Google search. So in one of those articles in Entrepreneur magazine back in 2014, you mentioned as you were growing up, you kind of showed that nice chart in the beginning in a remote village. You talked about being an outlier, how being an outlier set you on your entrepreneurial path. So I would kind of would like to see if you can share a few specific examples from there with the audience.
Yeah. Well, outlier to me is very simply, you're not thinking in a linear path. You're thinking outside the box, as they say. How do you think about that? And so on. So when this, I'll tell you the story of Topspin. When we couldn't find anything to do, we just decided that we will build this, have no idea what the market for that is or whatever else. But we went about saying, okay, we will just go and make this, whatever we do, happen. And we found a path. to do that. So that's the way you would think about it, is find a path. Everybody has the capability to find a path. It's just that they just need to think differently, I guess.
That's a, okay, so let me go with my thank you. For second question, I'll start from the audience. Some of you have put your questions in chat, so I want to honor that. But please post your questions in Q&A. So one of the question is from Andy Shao, one of our esteemed charter members, Thai, and a volunteer who's been there for a long time from Silicon Valley Bank. And so one of the questions, he said, awesome, Chris. He also he grew up in Flushing, Queens for a
Yes.
time and be in the Bay Area for the last 11. Thank you for presenting your journey tonight. Great to meet a fellow Queenside. So given your time in various markets, what do you find as an advantage to be an entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley with global ambitions? And what is the advantage to be, what is disadvantage to be building a company here?
I think Silicon Valley, one of the biggest advantages, everybody is thinking about building something, doing something, trying to do different. No idea is crazy. So you have access to friends, family, whatever. So whenever you're starting something, there's always somebody who knows something, whether it be how to raise money, how to hire the best marketing guy. That access, that network is Silicon Valley. That's what makes it, right? You can have access to capital somewhere else, but it's not the same. So there's a lot of disadvantages for companies um, to start some company somewhere else if you're a new to starting company. Silicon Valley gives you that unfair advantage of being networked. And everybody, believe it or not, in Silicon Valley, one thing, they all want to help. There's no, that community says, if somebody comes to me and say, I have an idea, I review the business plan. Everybody wants to help. That doesn't exist in other cities.
Yep, very good points, Chris. Second question is from Rahul Suman. He says, how much does Chris attribute his success to being basically physically located in Silicon Valley? Kind of a little bit answered. In today's day and age of COVID, do you recommend young professionals move to high cost Bay Area?
The story is you can start a company anywhere with today, and as I said, it's the same answer. How can you build a network of people to help you support it? If this is the first company, you need to have a network, and it's easier in Silicon Valley. But today, with social media, with LinkedIn, all these things, you can pretty much do a company anywhere, and all you need is good set of advisors and to get you started. So I would not move to Silicon Valley just to, it's not like if you want to be an aspiring actress, you want to go to Hollywood. It's not that way. You can actually start anywhere.
All right, thank you. So another question is from Jesus Jimenez, one of my colleagues who works with us also. Once you took that first step, were there any moments you regretted taking that step? And what did you do in order to get motivated to keep going?
That's a great question. I think once you take the first step, it is really, that's what I would call momentum. Even though it's one step, now you're forced to take the next step. You're not going to step back. So I didn't have any regrets taking the first step, nor any hesitation. For me, the personal motivation always been, once I take the first step, I'm always saying, okay, what can I do tomorrow? How am I advancing the ball? What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? And those could be, so every day, if you wake up and say, what am I doing today to move forward? That, right? Sometimes in football, you gain a 10 yards for football analogy in the US, or sometimes you make move in inches, but nevertheless you make forward progress. And that's really, it's all about creating that momentum and personal momentum.
That's great analogies, Chris. Next question is from Mo Khan. In what areas or verticals do you see the biggest opportunities for success in the future? What are the areas begging for innovation? I don't know. I'm sure a lot of areas are begging for innovation.
Yeah, I think there is no, I would say there are no areas that does not require every process, everything has to be reinvented. They're still innovating in the security space. I cannot even believe it. Every startup I see, they're in the security space. How many more can you innovate? But somehow everybody is successful, right? So there is always a reinvention going on. But if I look at trend, and I look at it, um, more the area that I'm working on right now, healthcare for Verizon. Telehealth is a big, it's going to completely transform how we do business. Remember, all of us that are older, we used to have house calls. Doctor used to come at home. In this country, in India, anywhere, you could have doctors coming. Telehealth in the year 2030 is coming back to the same way. Doctors, all health will be remote. You'll only go, it's similar to ATM machine. When an ATM machine started, people went to, went to the bank most of the time, and you couldn't access the bank, you went to the ATM. Today, nobody goes to the bank. Every transaction is through ATM, and you don't have to go to the bank, only if you have to have a special case. Telehealth is going to be like that. So there are areas like that where mobility, health, all these things require a lot of innovation. I would not look at one particular area. As I said, you have to look at multiple trend lines. Hey, if this is happening here and that is happening there, will there be some intersection if those two technologies coming together? For instance, IoT. IoT has been around for a long time. Everybody talks about IoT. Samsung refrigerator saying something. All, but then you have, I was going to say all crap, but Samsung is a partner too. So, then you have 5G coming along. That's another trend that on one side. So when you put all these things together, you say, hey, what if IoT happens and 5G happens? What happens? What are some of the different applications it enables? So those are the ways that you would find new areas to innovate, is to have multiple trend lines.
Thank you. Next question is from Ashish Garde. How did you get co-founders in the three companies you established?
The first co-founder, the co-founder for the Internet Junction is the three of us work together, and a simple truth: necessity is the mother of invention, right? So we were in this company who was working on IBM mainframe, and they had the most obsolete system. And we wanted to find a way to access the internet in the bulletin board. We were so bored at work. But in this company, you couldn't access the internet because IBM had nothing to do with. So the three colleagues met together and we decided to start a company. In BlueJeans, I met Algo in an opportunistic way. I was entering day one as an entrepreneur in resident at Norwest Venture Partner. I met him and he was about to leave. We met at the lobby and we just said, hey, we knew about each other. We had competed before. And said, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And said, hey, I want to work on video. And he said, hey, let's grab lunch. That's it. So sometimes these things work out, and that was one of the best decisions I made. Don't think too much.
Thank you. And then next one is from Ananya Gopalpur. How did you plan compensation structure before and after first round of funding?
What is the compensation for?
This generic question, I guess, maybe.
Sales
no, it just says, how do you plan comp structure before and after first round? So I'm assuming.
I assume that comp session is really about allocation of equity, probably, right? And
although even the salaries, I guess, many times startups don't have much money. So how do you compensate them, especially these days? Large companies pay a lot. So
I think that the biggest challenge for us in the industry is competing with the likes of Facebook if you want to attract top talent and all those things. I don't know. This is where I think your board probably is a good place to start. They already have benchmarks on how to give. Um, but at the end of the day, I believe that if the people that you're hiring believe in the company and you believe in that, compensation should not stop that. If compensation is stopping that, may not be the right culture.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, I think it's a it's
Yeah.
kind of very well standard here in the
Yeah.
Silicon Valley now,
Yeah.
right? From the issue equity structure, and you can always do better to make, in the industry or whatever you want to do. So next question is from David Radin. He says, you mentioned that when you started, you needed to know somebody to get funding. What about on the exit? How did you get into Cisco and Verizon? Were there people you knew? Is it smarter to create relationships early, or better to avoid potential for them to steal your ideas by waiting until you're ready to exit?
I have on the Cisco front, again, I focus on relationship. When you're building a company, our business, focus on getting to know people, not focus on the end goal, which is people say, hey, well, I need to, you create the relationship, you don't know when it's going to be handy. So Cisco, I happen to know um, the Cisco BD person, very good relationship. And when that person went into Cisco, I was able to get into that. Uh, Verizon, same way. By the way, we had done a reseller deal. We had a very good relationship, and when the pandemic started, we were able to negotiate the entire deal. It took over 3 months over BlueJeans video conferencing with a carrier to say it was a large sale and never been done before, and that's only because we already built the relationship. So it is. So I would say focus on building relationships and networks that will come in handy. So anytime.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And of course, my story when we used to do physically also, that was the idea. I always feel that all these events are very good for networking and even create one or two friends you make there. And
Yeah.
hopefully now here also.
So many people focus on networking for networking's sake, in the sense, hey, it's a casual business. But
Yeah.
if you can focus on deeper relationship with people,
Yes.
and it's more than just a transaction in the business community, that will go a long way when you need that relation. I can tell you stories after story. I'll, I'll look at the time. One simple story. I had a tough win. I needed this OEM deal with IBM. It's the crown jewel of what my accomplishment would be. So what I did, I was trying to get this guy to meet this big VP from IBM. Couldn't get on his calendar. Couldn't get on in. Yeah. Finally, I struck a relationship because I've been calling. Those days, you have to call. There's no with the admin of this SVP of IBM. I told her, I am desperate. I need to meet him. And she took pity because and she said, tomorrow at 7:30 a.m., he is going from Armonk. He's going to be traveling to LaGuardia, New York City. He has 1 hour in the airport lounge, and he's taking a flight to not the Raleigh where they are. I took a red eye to just fly into LaGuardia to meet him at the terminal, intercept him at the Admirals Club. And that's how I did that deal, because I had a relationship with the admin. It's what it takes to do it.
That's amazing. Totally agree. And also, like you said, networking, when I talk about networking, I mean, like you mentioned, same
Yeah.
thing. Many times people go with this transactional meet, collect a lot of cards,
Yeah.
and just call when they need something. That just, I also, based on my own experience, doesn't work. I mean, you have to meet, kind of build up, don't even expect anything, and just, go have whatever coffee or lunch and, you know, add some value.
Exactly.
So next question is from Kishore Apte. He has two questions. I'll just add them together. One is, has the acquisition been good for Verizon? in an acquisition like this, is there an upside to the founders based on sales user milestones? That's the second one.
I didn't get the second one. Repeat the second one.
Okay, so first is, has the acquisition been good for Verizon? Second is, in an acquisition like this, is there an upside for founders based on sales and user milestones? I'm assuming after you join the company.
All right. So the acquisition has been fantastic for both the BlueJeans. We are growing at 40% in a big way, right? At the number of licenses. This is what we needed. So acquisition, because Verizon is a big machine, and we are able to invest, and they were able to invest, and that's why we just launched the telehealth initiative, and there's a bunch of initiatives, remote learning, corporate training, lots of different video use cases. So it's been very good. So the second part of the question is, are there upside to the, I think every M&A transaction is unique to that transaction. There are some will have earnout based on sales, some will have retention, and some will have other bonuses or vesting. So everything is unique, so you can't generalize. Here's my philosophy. My philosophy is when somebody is buying a company, a big company acquires a small company, and typically they are acquiring not only for the technology, but for the founders, the employees. They are really putting their money and say, come and help us, because that's what you're pitching. So regardless of what the incentives are, I believe that you need to make that transaction successful, not sell and run. That's my personal philosophy. So that's how when I went to Cisco the first time, I stayed there, even though contractually I needed to be there for 2 years. I stayed there for close to 6 years. So the day I resigned, the first call I got was from John Chambers. Said, Krish, thank you for staying. He wanted to extend his hand. Remember the first time we met, we had a handshake. He came out of his office, extended, and how about another 4 years? That's what he told me. I said, sorry, I already extended my hand to somebody else, maybe next time. When next time happened, he was still the CEO and chairman. When they told him they're acquiring Topspin, and Krish is the founder, CEO, not the founder. And he basically said, if it's Krish we are buying, I don't need to look at the deal. The deal was approved. And for whatever reason, he said, here is a special gift from me to Krish. And he gave me an obscene number of Cisco options besides the transaction, just because he felt that I would bring in the company, and he believed, and I stayed there to make the server technology that talks about. That's what I'm talking about. You have to be sincere in your transaction with customers, employees, and when you build that trust, everything will fall in place.
Yeah, very good points, Chris. So next is from Dipti. You mentioned customer acquisition was a key differentiator between Zoom and the BlueJeans. The freemium business model allowed them to grow and scale. If you had to do this all over again, what, if anything, would you do different? Actually, before that, I wanted to make a point. I think you guys are already growing. I'm not going to say the number unless you want to share. Within a few years, you had built the company, BlueJeans, into a high 8-figure revenue numbers very fast. I mean, that was amazing, if I remember.
Right. So that was true. I think I would say they're one of the fastest $100 million companies in the Valley. Not even 50.
Revenue-wise, yeah.
I went to 100 million so fast without any structure, anything. Within the first 4 years of the lifetime, it was so 100, right? 100 million is when we started noticing some structural issues that I should have taken care of. But to answer Dipti's question, I think retrospectively, I would have gone after the freemium model, recognized the benefit of the freemium, and I would have engineered my cost out of my service, and I would have done the freemium as well. And I would have paid more attention to competition. Very simple, right? I'm at 100 million, somebody maybe, it's the hare and the tortoise story.
Right. All right. So let's thank you, Chris. Next question is from Rishikesh Sathawane. What gives you strength to ignore or counter naysayers?
Hey,
What
sorry. Say that again.
what gives strength, or I guess what gives you strength to ignore, counter naysayers?
Yeah. In fact, I don't know how to say that, but um, if you're going to start a company, there are going to be naysayers. In fact, if there are no naysayers, you have to try, because in order for you to differentiate, if you think almost like you need to have naysayers in order to validate your company. Think about it, right? If somebody says it, if you come up with an idea and everybody says it's a great idea, that means it's not differentiated enough. In a if you say this, if somebody says this cannot be done, that means you're solving a critical problem. So the naysayers almost are in a ironic way validating that something is a difficult problem to solve. That's how I think about it. If they say can't be done, it that's what, right? That's what gives you the strength to go and solve it.
Basically, you have to show them that you can. Why can't
Yeah,
it be done?
yeah,
I'll
exactly.
get it. So next question is from Vaishnav Kovuri. While many ideas float around in the mind, how would you narrow to the one and pursue your suggestions?
Oh,
Just meditate.
I
Anyway,
actually I will go back to my thing. The idea that you pursue is the one idea you are willing to take the first step on. And invariably that's the one that's leader. Whatever ideas you have, take the first step on one of them. Doesn't matter, but it doesn't, because if you think about it, you have all these ideas. If you're still not taking the first step, it doesn't really matter.
that's right. Okay, another question is from Mr. Paul Singh. You already know he was also a competitor to Internet Junction in
Hey,
those days.
Mr.
I
Paul,
remember
how are
interacting
you?
with. I guess today is a day of your ex-competitors and still remember competing with Internet Junction. Okay, he's mentioning that. Great presentation. Good to know your story. Considering the rise of Zoom, who probably had a lot less technology than BlueJeans, was it their business model, user experience that gave them huge advantage? And
Oh,
Paul also wrote a book, by the way, called Intranet, where I think I remember on the IPX to IP gateway thing.
yeah, I know. Well, we're all good friends, right? So the relationship, as I said, matters. Your competitors are your friends at the end of the day. Um, Paul, I think between us and Zoom, I would say the business model is one of them. That I think Eric is very smart, and he had something. He had knowledge going in from from WebEx. What are some of the issues that that they need to solve from a customer acquisition, from an adoption perspective? Where are the, and so they did a very good job in terms of execution. So again, back to the idea, everybody has great ideas. Ultimately, 99% of the success comes from execution. And Eric did a fantastic job in terms of executing this. I mean, you may have a good business model like freemium, but he executed the business model well, so well, right? And so that's the, and the hats off to him.
Then obviously they got lucky also with the COVID. I mean, there
Yes,
is always an
but
element of luck, right?
so there's this, I would say
Or
there's the
opportunity.
element of luck, but it's like, if you wish to win the lottery, you can't just wish it. You need to buy a lottery ticket in order to
Right.
even consider it. So if they were not in the field already successful when they got the pandemic, but if they were not there, they would not have been lucky. So they had the lottery ticket.
Yes,
They just,
that's true. Good points. All right, the next question is from Dipti. We have one more question. We are almost getting to the time. She wanted you to um, talk a little, if you want to share what you're doing in telehealth area and what are the features that you have that would make your telehealth platform better than the large number of startups that are entering this market in droves. So now that's up to you to answer if you want to answer
yeah,
about
I can
Verizon
answer
as
that
well.
quickly because Very simple. During the pandemic, a lot of startups, a lot of hospitals went into remote telehealth using collaboration platforms like Zoom or even BlueJeans or anything else. They were not built for telehealth. They were built for meetings. So your doctor patient is not a meeting. It's really a appointment. So we had to purpose build it. And that's one other thing. And the second thing is we integrate with the Verizon network. So actually your mobile call with your doctor is well integrated, crystal clear. And the third thing is really all the hospital integrations that we are doing, and also working with different providers. Because we are Verizon, there's so much, I would say, a third-party integration that comes into our platform that's bigger than any startups can do. Because in healthcare, you want to make sure that you have the most reliable platform that the hospitals can trust. And that's actually a big differentiation between us. And we do the innovation, but we also have Verizon, the mothership.
Yeah, and of course the Verizon's name and all the infrastructure behind. So one question from last question, and then I'll ask you one last. From AGK is networking is key according to you, obviously. How should the audience leverage a platform like Thai right now, especially with all this, the video conversation we are having here?
Yeah, I think Thai is a great place for people to network, but network, as I said, how do you leverage? You meet people. Thai facilitates introduction, but those introductions, you need spend time, be sincere about developing a relationship. Not, as I said, you need to be able to have mentors and advisors and so on, and not look at it as, I meet with this guy and can I get an introduction to that company where I can go and sell? That becomes a transaction and that will not last. You are basically building friends, right? You have to, and that takes time because there's no instant gratification on that one.
Okay, Chris, so the last one is basically what I'm going to, it's more of a statement, I think, from one of your articles about being outliers. So which I would like all the attendees to remember, including myself, because I'm still, enjoying our startups stuff. So it's okay to be an outlier. It's a quote. I'm just kind of saying what you had said in one of your articles. I don't know if you remember. So outliers are more adaptable to change, and the world needs them to continue building, innovating, and solving the problems ahead. So with that, I would like to thank Krish very much for spending the last 1 hour with a wonderful and amazing story and Q&As. So really, thank you so much. Thank you all the attendees, and have a wonderful evening. We have another session next month in June. I think it's June 15th with Shyam Rao, who had just sold his company called Punch to Power Technology over 500 million. So we have another amazing speaker, then another one in July. So we have tons of.
Listen.
All right. Thank you again, and have a great evening. Let's give a round of virtual applause.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate you doing that. And thanks, audience. I hope you took some nuggets away. Please take those and implement it in your own journey, right? That's very, very important. One thing is to hear the story. Another thing is to take away some nuggets and implement it. So thank you, Naveen, and thank you, Chris, for doing that.
Yeah.
Until next time. Bye.
Thank you, AGK. Really appreciate. Let's continue building, innovating, and solving the problems ahead. Be an outlier. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.